So why not just use a stock compressor on every single one of your tracks? Why do you even need any other types of compressors? A lot of times we're more comfortable with them. They're convenient because they're just easy to grab in a lot of cases. And they take up less processing than, third-party VSTs. But the problem is that we could be missing out on some benefits that those other types of, classic-style compressors offer us. And so I thought it'd be beneficial for us to do a little listening test and see if we can get close to the settings just using the stock compressor of those more classic styles of compression. So let's see how much of a difference it really makes. So the way that I've designed this test is we're going to listen to 3 different types of audio. We're going to listen to drums, vocals, and acoustic guitar. But in each of those, we're going to compare 4 different types of classic compressors, which is optical, VCA, FET compressors, and tube compressors. So what I did was I mimicked as closely as possible the attack and release and ratio settings with the stock compressor for each one of those. And we're going to do a little listening test to see if we can hear the difference in each of those classics. So first type of classic compression we're going to compare to is tube compression. And tube compression adds a lot of nice color and harmonic distortion, and it's not transparent. And so that's going to be one of the things I want you to listen out for. And also it's going to have a generally slower response time. So a lot of times with digital compressors like this, you get to pick these really specific values as fast as you want, basically, for the attack and release, but that's not always an option with tube style compressors. All right, let's take a listen to what the drums sound like just raw first.
Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind.
The next type of compressor that we're going to look at are FET compressors, or field effect transistor compressors. Now you can think of like the 1176 as like the most classic version of that. This style of compression is going to also add a bit of color, maybe not quite as much as tubes do, but it's still going to add some color. It's not going to be completely transparent. But the thing about the FET style compressors is that they're very responsive. So even the slowest value for attack and release that you can even set is still really, really fast. So they're super precise. So let's take a listen and see if we can hear the difference.
Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind. Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind.
The next style of compressor we're going to use is the VCA compressor. So think like, the Neve 33609 and the SSLG bus compressor, that type of thing. So generally, depending on the components that are used, without getting too much into the weeds of the technicalities, they're going to be relatively transparent in comparison to the previous two, but they're also going to give us that responsiveness. So let's see if we can hear.
Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind. Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind.
Now, the last style of compressor we're going to listen to is the optical compressor. And the most classic version of this is going to be the LA2A. And with these, you're going to get, a transparent sound. It's going to have very minimal coloring. And a lot of times you don't even get control over the attack and release values. On the LA2A, you certainly don't. What you do get is a input driven style of compressor. So depending on how dynamic the audio is in the input side, that's what is going to determine the type of output that you get. You have way less control, usually just one knob. So let's see if we can hear the difference.
Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind. Last thing you said is on my mind. The last thing you said is on my mind.
So there we have it. Let me know down below which ones you guys preferred in each of those tests. One thing that really stuck out to me though was how well different compressors handled different types of audio, especially when you consider how dynamic certain audio was. For example, the drums versus the vocals. Drums are much more transient and vocals are much smoother. So it was interesting to see how the different compressors reacted and interacted with that type of audio. And by the way, this test is not bulletproof by any means. There were a lot of cases where I had to just make adjustments based on some general guidelines that were in the manuals for each of those compressors. So it's not going to be perfect, but what it will tell us is how close we can get with the stock compressors in comparison to, that classic style of compression that you hear all over pop records these days, and whether or not it's worth it. So do let us know what you thought of each of the comparisons, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.